You already know what you want to build. You've known for years. The book, the business, the channel, the career change, the thing you keep calling someday. It's not vague, it's specific. You can see it clearly, sometimes so clearly it almost hurts. And yet, here you are, not doing it. This is not a video about laziness. Lazy people don't feel this kind of pain. Lazy people are comfortable. What you feel is different. It's the specific ache of someone who knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing and can't make themselves do it. That distinction matters more than you think. The story you've been telling yourself is one of two things. Either you're guilty, you call yourself a coward, a fraud, someone who talks but never delivers, or you're patient, waiting for the right moment, the right resources, the right version of yourself that's finally ready. Both stories feel true. Both are wrong. Because the problem isn't you. Not exactly. Between the life you're living and the life you know you should be living, there is something standing in the way. Something active, not passive. Not an absence of willpower, not a character flaw, a force. Steven Pressfield spent decades studying why gifted, ambitious, hungry people stay frozen between their dream and reality. What he found doesn't let you off the hook, but it does change everything about where you aim. Pressfield called it resistance, capital R. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Resistance is not procrastination. It's not fear. It's not laziness. Those are just the clothes it wears on any given day. Resistance is the invisible force that rises up every single time you try to do work that matters. Creative work, meaningful work, the kind of work that would require you to actually become who you say you want to be. It is universal, impersonal, and relentless. It has been fighting you your entire life, and until now, you've been calling it by the wrong name. Here's what changes when you name it correctly. The enemy stops being you. But that's not the relief it sounds like. Because resistance doesn't care about your feelings or your potential or how many years you've already lost. It has one job: to keep you exactly where you are. And it is very, very good at it. What you're about to hear is not a pep talk. It is a map of the war you've been losing, and the only way to start winning it. You've blamed yourself for years. That's the first thing resistance gets right. It never announces itself. It doesn't show up as an external obstacle you can point to and fight. It shows up as your own voice, your own reasoning, your own feelings, telling you perfectly sensible things. I'm not ready. Today's not the right day. I need to learn more before I start. You hear that voice and you think, that's me being realistic. That's me being responsible. That's just how I feel. That's not you. That's resistance wearing your face. Pressfield is precise about this. Resistance is invisible, internal, and insidious. Invisible, you cannot see it operating. You only see the result. Another day gone, another week swallowed, another year filed under soon. Internal. It doesn't come from your circumstances. It doesn't come from your lack of time, your lack of money, your lack of connections. People with no resources and no time have built extraordinary things. People with every advantage have built nothing. The variable was never external. It was always this, and insidious, because it doesn't attack you with obvious sabotage. It attacks you with logic, with caution, with voices that sound like wisdom. This is why it's so effective. You can fight an enemy you can see. You cannot fight one that speaks in your own voice and sounds completely reasonable. Here's what makes resistance even more ruthless. It is completely impersonal. It is not punishing you specifically. It does not have a personal vendetta against your dream. It attacks everyone who tries to create, to grow, to do anything that would require them to move from where they are to where they could be. The writer feels it. The entrepreneur feels it. The person trying to leave a dead relationship, change a career, learn something difficult. All of them feel the same force, in the same way, with the same excuses dressed up in different clothes. You are not uniquely broken. You are not uniquely weak. You are simply at war, like everyone else who has ever tried to do something real. But here's the part that should unsettle you. Resistance never sleeps. It is not a phase you push through and leave behind. It is not something that disappears once you get started, once you find your rhythm, once you prove yourself. Pressfield is unambiguous. Resistance will be there tomorrow. It will be there in 10 years. The professional who has shipped 100 projects still faces it every morning. The only difference between them and you is not that they feel it less. It's that they stopped waiting for it to go away before they acted. You have been waiting for a day that doesn't exist. And the cruelest thing about resistance, the thing that reframes everything, is that it is proportional. The more important the work is to your soul, the harder it fights, which means the paralysis you feel around your biggest dream is not evidence that you're not cut out for it. It is evidence of exactly the opposite. Resistance only fights hard for things that matter. That's the map of the enemy. But maps don't show you how it hunts. In the next part, we go into the specific traps it sets, the ones you've already fallen into without knowing it. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Resistance is not creative. It is repetitive. It uses the same traps on everyone, but it dresses them so well that every person believes their version is unique, personal, and legitimate. Let's go through them. Not as a list, as a mirror. The first mask is procrastination. Not the crude kind, not lying in bed scrolling while knowing you should be working. The sophisticated kind, the I'll start Monday kind. The conditions aren't quite right yet, but they will be soon kind. Resistance doesn't need you to procrastinate forever. It only needs you to procrastinate today. And tomorrow, it will use the same argument, dressed slightly differently, and it will work again. Procrastination is not a time management problem. It is resistance buying itself another day. The second mask is preparation. This one is particularly vicious because it looks like discipline. You read the books, you take the courses, you research, you plan, you build elaborate frameworks for the thing you're going to do. Years pass. You are more prepared than ever. You have still not begun. Resistance doesn't care how much you know about your dream. It cares that you never touch it. Infinite preparation is cowardice wearing the costume of responsibility. Then there's perfectionism. The standard you set is impossible, so you never start. Because starting means producing something imperfect. And imperfect means failure. And failure means the dream was wrong. And if the dream was wrong, then you wasted years believing in something that wasn't real. Resistance knows this logic paralyzes you. It constructed it specifically for you. Victimhood is another one. You don't have the time others have. You don't have the money, the connections, the circumstances. Someone else got lucky. You got dealt a harder hand. All of this may even be partially true. But resistance uses it as a ceiling. A permanent explanation for permanent inaction. The moment you accept your circumstances as the reason you haven't started, you have handed resistance a weapon it will use forever. And then there is the most invisible mask of all, drama. Suddenly, right when you were about to begin, really begin, something urgent appears. A crisis in a relationship, a financial emergency, a conflict that needs your full attention right now. These things feel real because sometimes they are real. But resistance is a master at either manufacturing them or amplifying them just enough to steal the hours that were supposed to belong to your work. You look up 6 months later and realize you've been managing chaos instead of building anything. Here's what all of these masks have in common. They feel justified in the moment. That's the point. Resistance doesn't tempt you with obvious self-destruction. It tempts you with reasonable-sounding delay. And reasonable-sounding delay, compounded over years, is the same as never. You've worn at least one of these masks. Probably more than one. Probably at the same time. But knowing the masks is only half of it. The deeper question is why your biggest dreams generate the most unbearable version of all this. Why the thing that matters most is exactly the thing you can't seem to touch. That's where we're going next. Here is the cruelest law Pressfield discovered. Resistance is proportional to importance, not inversely proportional, directly. The bigger the dream, the more violently resistance fights it. The more your soul needs something, the harder the force inside you works to make sure you never touch it. This is not poetic language. It is a precise description of a mechanism. And once you understand it, the paralysis you've been carrying starts to look completely different. Think about the things in your life you do without struggle, the tasks you complete, the habits you maintain, the obligations you meet. Resistance leaves most of those alone. They're not threatening enough. But that thing, the one you've been circling for years, planning without executing, dreaming without building, that one gets the full force, every weapon, every mask, every day. Which means your paralysis is not a sign that you're wrong for the dream. It is a sign that the dream is right for you. This should feel like relief. It doesn't, because it also means there is no version of pursuing the thing that matters most where resistance goes quiet. There is no threshold of readiness you cross where the fear dissolves and the work becomes easy. Pressfield is brutally clear. The professional who has done the work for 20 years feels resistance every morning. The fear doesn't leave. The doubt doesn't leave. What changes is the relationship to it. But there's something darker underneath this that most people never face directly. Resistance is not actually afraid of your failure. It is afraid of your success. Because failure is safe. It confirms the story. It explains the unlived life. It gives you something to point to. Success is dangerous. Success means you have to live at the height of your potential, without excuses, without the comfortable identity of someone who almost tried. Success means the gap between who you are and who you could be closes. And you have to become that person, permanently, with no way back. Resistance knows this terrifies you more than failure ever could. So it keeps you exactly here, dreaming large enough to feel significant, acting small enough to stay safe. The dream becomes a possession instead of a direction, something you carry to feel like you're someone without ever having to prove it. And the years pass inside that gap, comfortable and devastating at once. Here is the truth that Pressfield's entire work is building toward. You will never feel ready. The moment of perfect preparation will never arrive. The fear will not decrease before you begin. It decreases only after, and only temporarily, before returning the next morning asking the same questions. Waiting for readiness is not patience. It is surrender, dressed as strategy. So the question stops being, when will I be ready, and starts being something harder. What kind of person shows up anyway? That question has a name, and it changes everything. We'll get to it next. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Forget everything you think the word professional means. Pressfield is not talking about credentials, income, or recognition. He is talking about a psychological stance, a fundamental shift in how you relate to your work. And the difference between the amateur and the professional is not talent. It is not even discipline in the way you usually think about it. It is one thing. The amateur waits. The professional shows up. The amateur works when inspired, when the mood is right, when the conditions align, when they feel the pull. Inspiration becomes the gatekeeper. And since inspiration is unreliable, the amateur is unreliable. Days become weeks. Weeks become the story of someone who was going to do something. The amateur treats the dream like a relationship that depends entirely on feeling. and no relationship survives on feeling alone. The professional does something different. The professional treats the work like a job, not because it's mechanical, but because showing up is non-negotiable. You don't wake up and decide whether you feel like going to work. You go. The professional applies the same logic to the dream. You sit down, you open the document, you start the session, regardless of how you feel about it today. The muse, Pressfield says, rewards those who are already at their desk when she arrives. She does not visit people who are waiting to feel ready. This is where the practical truth lives. Not as a checklist, but as a confrontation. Your first hours of the day belong to the work. Not to email, not to your phone, not to news or notifications or other people's urgency. The moment you hand those hours to anything else, resistance has already won the day before you notice the fight had started. 2 hours, protected, non-negotiable, before the world gets access to you. That is the first act of a professional. The second is accepting that the early work will be bad. This is not pessimism. It is the condition of every craft ever mastered. The first videos will be rough. The first chapters will be weak. The first attempts will embarrass you. Resistance uses this certainty as a weapon. If you can't do it well, don't do it at all. The professional's answer is the opposite. You do it badly, consistently, until you do it less badly, until one day you do it well. There is no other path. Waiting to be good before you start is waiting to be fluent before you speak a word of the language. The third is removing the daily decision. Resistance thrives in the space where you ask yourself, should I work today? Eliminate the question. Same time, same place, same duration, every day. Not when you feel like it, not when conditions allow. A locked routine is not rigidity. It is the removal of the door. Resistance walks through every morning. And here is what happens when you commit to this. When you show up anyway, when you do the work badly and then less badly, when you stop waiting for the feeling and start building the fact, something shifts. Not in the work first, in you. The identity of someone who waits begins to dissolve. What replaces it is something resistance cannot touch, the lived evidence that you are someone who does. But before you can become that person fully, there is one more trap to dismantle. The most seductive one. The one you've probably been living inside without knowing it has a name. Pressfield noticed something that most people never catch about themselves. Not everyone who surrenders to resistance abandons their dream entirely. Some people do something more sophisticated and more devastating. They build a life that orbits the dream without ever touching it. They get close enough to feel like they're moving, close enough to tell themselves a story about progress. But they never cross the threshold into the real thing. Pressfield calls this the shadow career. The shadow career is not laziness. That's what makes it so dangerous. It looks like effort. It feels like preparation. It produces real results in a direction that is almost, but not quite, the thing your soul is actually asking for. You want to write. So you read obsessively about writing. You follow writers, study their processes, annotate their books, build a library. You know more about the craft than most people who are actually writing. But you have not written. The shadow career is everything around the dream, the studying, the consuming, the preparing, that allows you to feel like a writer without exposing yourself to what being a writer actually requires. You want to build a business, so you do an MBA. You work inside a company to learn how things work. You take another course. You build the spreadsheet for the business plan that lives in a folder you haven't opened in 4 months. Resistance lets you do all of this because none of it is the real thing. None of it demands the exposure, the risk, the possibility of public failure that the actual dream requires. Here is the question you need to sit with. What are you doing about your dream instead of doing your dream? Because there is a version of your daily life that is entirely constructed around avoiding the central act. the podcast you listen to about entrepreneurship instead of registering the company, the course about video production instead of filming the first video, the journal entries about the book instead of the manuscript. All of it real, all of it useful, none of it the thing. Resistance prefers the shadow career to outright surrender because it keeps you pacified. You feel like you're in motion. You feel like you're someone who takes their dreams seriously. And that feeling is just enough to blunt the pain of not actually doing it, which means the pain never becomes unbearable enough to force action. The shadow career is a painkiller for a wound that needs to stay open long enough to make you move. The moment you name it, something becomes unavoidable. You already know what the shadow career is. You've known for a while. There is something you do consistently that lets you feel adjacent to the dream without being inside it. And part of you has always understood that this is what it is. Resistance counted on you not naming it, because once you name it, continuing it becomes a conscious choice, not an unconscious drift. Stop doing the thing around the dream. Start doing the dream, badly, incompletely, without permission, without readiness. The shadow career ends the moment you decide that proximity to the real thing is no longer enough. Which brings us to the only question that actually matters. Not how to prepare, not how to feel ready, but what you do with the years that are already passing. That's where we're going now. 5 years from now, you will be 5 years older. That is not a threat. It is just the only certainty available to you right now. Time is not waiting for you to feel ready. It is not pausing while you prepare, while you research, while you circle the thing you keep calling your dream. It is moving at exactly the same speed it always has. And the only variable, the only thing you actually control, is what gets built inside that time. This is the truth Pressfield's entire work is pointing toward. Not a technique, not a system, a reckoning. You have spent real time, months, maybe years, in the gap between knowing and doing. And that time is not coming back. This is not said to punish you. It is said because the weight of it, felt fully, is the only thing powerful enough to move someone who has become comfortable in the waiting. Guilt keeps you stuck. Wait makes you act. There is a difference. Here is the hardest thing. Resistance will be there tomorrow morning. It will have a new argument, a new excuse, a new version of the voice that sounds exactly like you being reasonable. It will tell you that today is not quite right, that you need just a little more time, that starting tomorrow is functionally the same as starting today. It has told you this before. You know how that ends. The only response that works is not motivation. Motivation is what you feel before you understand resistance. It's the amateur's fuel, and it burns out before the work gets hard. What replaces it is simpler and less comfortable. You show up anyway. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, you open the document, you start the recording, you write the first line of the plan. Not because you feel ready, not because resistance has quieted, but because you have finally understood that waiting for the right feeling is the same as choosing never. You do not need more preparation. You do not need better conditions. You do not need permission from anyone. Not from the market. Not from people who've done it before you. Not from some future version of yourself that finally feels qualified. That version is not coming to save you. You are the only person who was ever going to do this. Start badly. Start scared. Start with what you have, where you are, in the 15 minutes available to you today, if that's all there is. The quality of the beginning is irrelevant. The fact of it is everything. Every professional you admire began with something worse than what you would produce right now. And they are ahead of you, not because they were more talented, but because they began. Resistance will not disappear the moment you start. But something else happens, something Pressfield observed in himself and in every creative who ever pushed through. The work begins to generate its own momentum. Not inspiration. Momentum. The difference is crucial. Inspiration is given to you. Momentum is built by you, day by day, through the accumulation of small acts of showing up when you didn't feel like it. That is what is available to you. Not a transformation that happens in a single moment of clarity. A construction, slow, unglamorous, and entirely within your reach. The question you came here with was why you can't make yourself do the thing you know you should do. You have the answer now. What you do with it is yours alone. If something in this video landed, if you recognized yourself in a way you weren't expecting, leave it in the comments. Name the resistance. That act alone is not nothing. And when you're ready to go deeper into the mechanics of the mind that keeps you from the life you're capable of, the next video is already waiting. You don't need to look for it. If you've made it this far, you already know you're not done.